Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Colin Aldrich did not expect such a turn. Everything in his life seemed to be going perfectly. 6 months ago, he received a promotion at work, as well as a good salary increase. Celia's interior design business has been developing, and now she makes a significant contribution to their family budget. The house they bought 2 years ago is not luxurious, but it is spacious enough for their needs and is located in a good area. Recently, he and Celia started talking about children, so he didn't expect problems when they caught up with him. Colin couldn't help but notice an unfamiliar car parked in front of his house, but it didn't bother him. But he was worried when he came out of the garage and found Celia sitting in the living room next to another man. When he entered the room, she immediately stood up, and Colin couldn't help but notice how slim and attractive she looked. It was only when he looked at her face that he saw that she was nervous. "Hi, honey," she greeted him. Then she gestured at the man still sitting on the couch. "Do you remember Vince Callahan?" she asked. "He is my client. I was doing a new interior design for his office. You've already met." "Oh yes, I remember now. Hi, Vince. It's good to see you again. What brings you here?" Vince gave Celia an embarrassed look and she cleared her throat. "Damn, it's so hard," she said softly. Then she took a deep breath as if preparing for the upcoming ordeal. "Honey, I really have no other choice. I'm leaving you." These words made no sense to him. "What did you say?" She shook her head sadly. "I know this is shocking to you, but I filed for divorce." He half stumbled over to the armchair opposite the sofa and sat down heavily. "What? Why?" "We didn't want this to happen," she said contritely, "but Vince and I fell in love. We've been dating for quite some time now, and we don't want to hide our love anymore." "Did you have an affair on the side?" Colin asked stupidly. She cast a quick glance at her lover. "We didn't plan this, but after a while we just couldn't deny our feelings for each other. Anyway, I've already loaded some of my stuff into the car. I'll come for the rest later." But, Colin stammered. She ignored his unsuccessful protest and handed him an envelope he hadn't noticed. "Here are the papers and everything else. I tried to be very fair about the settlement, but just so you know, I still went ahead and withdrew half of our savings. In any case, you should invite your lawyer to look into everything. If you have any problems, he or she can contact my lawyer, whose business card I attached to the notification." He stupidly accepted the envelope, still trying to make sense of what was happening. While he was sitting holding it in his hands, she returned to Vince and took his hand. He stood up and the two of them moved to the door. "But why? What?" "I've already explained everything," she interrupted. She nodded her head at Vince, who opened the front door. She turned around for the last time. "So I think we should go. And Colin, I'm really sorry. I want you to know that it's not because of you, but because of me, okay?" And they left, taking with them the happiness he had enjoyed for the past 8 years. Colin has always considered himself balanced. Faced with an emergency at work, he could always calmly and quickly analyze the problem before deciding what to do. Today, this ability has left him. Now his thoughts were chaotic. He was jumping from one topic to another, unable to focus on any of them. How could I not understand that this was happening? Where can I find a good lawyer? How do I prepare for the meeting with Ferguson tomorrow morning? I wonder if Celia has anything planned for dinner. How am I supposed to handle this? Thoughts raced, spinning and repeating in his brain, each demanding attention, until he clapped his hands, trying to make them stop. In desperation, he got up and headed for the bedroom. Throwing off his clothes, he left them lying where they had fallen, and then climbed into bed in mental exhaustion. Surprisingly, he soon fell asleep and stayed in bed until the next morning. When he woke up, the stream of thoughts had subsided, but he was surrounded by evidence of the new reality of his life. He immediately noticed that Celia was not lying next to him, and when he went to get dressed, he found that her part of the closet was empty. When he went into the kitchen to make himself a coffee, his footsteps seemed to echo in the empty house. Even when he looked out the window, the morning in North Carolina seemed even more gloomy to him. Vince Callahan woke up to Celia staring at the ceiling with her hands behind her head. "What are you thinking about, baby?" he asked. "Probably about Colin," she replied. "I hope he's okay." "He's going to be fine," Vince said dismissively. "I hope so," she said. "When we left, he looked like he was in a state of shock. I feel uneasy. After all, he was not a bad husband. It's just kind of stagnated, you know?" "It won't happen to us," he vowed. "You will have a lot of fun." At the same time, he playfully pinched her left nipple, and then turned over on his back and began to kiss her passionately. "Oh, Vince, yes," she gasped, and the memories of last night's passion came rushing back to her. All thoughts of Colin quickly evaporated from the sensual overload. For most of the day, the envelope Celia had given him sat on Colin's desk in the office. When he couldn't put it off any longer, he opened it and began reading the divorce petition and the proposed financial settlement. But it was difficult to focus on the dry legal language, because from the very beginning he did not want a divorce. He wanted to put his head on the table and cry, but he didn't want anyone in the office to see him like this. After a few minutes, he got up and slowly walked down the hallway to his boss's office. This woman had hired him at the time, and he considered her his mentor. She looked up at him when he knocked on the doorframe, then looked closer. "Are you okay, Colin? You don't look very good." With a pained expression on his face, he asked, "Do you know the name of a good divorce lawyer?" "Oh shit, Colin, not you and not Celia, sit down." With these words, the woman got up and closed the office door. Then she sat down on the chair next to Colin and put her hand on his forearm. "Tell me what happened," she asked with obvious concern. This time, Colin couldn't hide his tears. When Colin finally met with the lawyer his boss had recommended to him, he soon regretted doing so. His advice was straightforward. Take what Celia offered and run. "But I don't care how profitable her offer is," Colin protested. "I don't want a divorce at all, and I certainly don't want to pay her to leave me and live with some other guy." The lawyer sighed. "Look, you need to approach this issue rationally. You can't force your wife to stay married to you if she wants to leave. And honestly, you wouldn't want her to stay if all you get is an unhappy wife. As for paying her, you don't see that from my side. All that Celia, her name is Celia, right? All she's asking for is to split up your current assets. She doesn't even require alimony. Obviously, she plans to remarry as soon as the divorce takes place. Listen to me. I've seen wives claim their husbands' retirement accounts, demand backbreaking alimony, and claim most of the family property, including the house. Your wife is behaving sensibly. You should not anger her and provoke her to vindictiveness." "Maybe so," Colin said stubbornly, "but the fact remains that I still don't want to get a divorce." The lawyer nodded and his tone became sympathetic. "Look, Colin, you need a marital counseling lawyer. Firstly, I don't understand this, and secondly, I charge much more than any marriage counselor. If you are not ready to sign a contract, my advice is to find someone who will help you sort out your feelings." When Colin told his boss about the meeting, she surprised him by handing him a business card. "I thought that's how you'd react after our conversation. I think you should go to Dr. Helmar. He is a psychologist specializing in family problems. I had several friends who used his services, and everyone spoke about him with delight. Try it and see if he can help." At the third consultation, Colin was repeating a series of complaints when Dr. Helmar interrupted him. "Look, Colin, let's be honest. You're stuck. I want you to change direction mentally. I'm sure you're familiar with the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. People make the mistake that they don't differ from each other, and you don't have to go through them carefully, in stages. Listening to you, I have heard at one time or another that you describe all 5 stages except acceptance. This is completely natural for a person experiencing what you have experienced. But you also said that you think rationally, are able to sort out problems and find a solution. That's exactly what you need to do now. Put aside emotional worries in order to develop a strategy that will allow you to move forward. You know intellectually that Celia doesn't want to come back. You know intellectually that you don't want to bring her back if she doesn't want to be with you. Until you can accept the reality of this, over which you have no control, I will add, you will continue to remain at an impasse. You need to solve the problem of life after Celia based on the facts, as you have done when faced with other problems in the past." Colin sat in silence, thinking over what the consultant had just said. He realized that most of the pain he was experiencing was caused by the fact that everything had happened so crazily and unexpectedly. There were no warnings, no signs that their marriage was in danger. One minute he was a happy husband, and the next day he was close to divorce. One moment he believed that Celia loved him, and the next day he found out that she was sleeping with another man. How can I move forward if I don't know which of these is real? And how do I move on when I'm feeling all this anger? The consultant listened to Colin's outburst in silence. As soon as Colin stopped talking, Dr. Helmar asked, "Have you ever heard of Reinhold Niebuhr?" Colin shook his head. He was a well-known theologian of the 20th century who wrote a simple and powerful prayer. God, give me the peace of mind to accept what I can't change, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference. This is a prayer for peace. I've heard of her. That's how Alcoholics Anonymous prays. That's right. In any case, in my opinion, it simply and eloquently reflects the passage of the stages of grief. This is what you need to strive for: calmness, acceptance, and wisdom. Without doing this, you will not be able to move on. When Colin left the session that day, Niebuhr's prayer continued to ring in his head. Peace of mind is what I want in my life. The question is, how do I achieve it? What can I do to find peace? After all the weekend spent thinking, he decided on a plan of action. On Monday, Colin called his lawyer. I'll agree to anything Celia asks if I can talk to her face-to-face for half an hour. Are you sure? The lawyer asked. I have seen how terribly bad such meetings go, and very few of them satisfy one of the parties in the divorce. This time it will be different, I promise. Arrange it. When Colin was ushered into the conference room of Celia's lawyer, he was surprised to see Vince sitting next to her and holding her hand. Actually, it's even good, Colin thought. Now Vince and Celia will be able to hear everything with their own ears. Celia's lawyer motioned for him to start, and Colin cleared his throat. Look, Celia, it's just as hard for me as it is for you. Things didn't work out the way I wanted between us, but I think that happens to a lot of people in life. In this case, what's done is done, and now it's time for me to move on. My lawyer told me that you offered a fair agreement and advised me to accept it. In the spirit of moving forward, I am ready to do it. He picked up the pen on the table and signed the agreement with a flourish. When the couple on the other side of the table exchanged a relieved look, he added, I want to say something else. They both froze, afraid of what was coming next. I understand that you are planning to get married as soon as the divorce is finalized, Colin continued. So in order not to stop there, let me wish you happiness in your marriage. With that, he walked around the table and shook hands with an astonished Vince. Then he bent down, gave Celia a friendly hug, and kissed her on the cheek. The lovers looked at him in surprise, and he turned and left the hall. They looked at each other. What was that just now? Vince asked. Celia shook her head in amazement. Wow, it's not what I expected at all. Then she smiled. But it's wonderful. The last thing I wanted was a war between us every time we see him. When the terms of the divorce were settled, Colin had to sell the house they owned together. Celia had no interest in him, since she had already moved into Vince's house. Colin didn't have the funds needed to buy out Celia's part, and even if he did, he knew the house was too big for him. Besides, there are too many memories associated with him, he decided. The good news was that the real estate market is at its peak, so it won't be difficult to sell the house. The bad news was that since Colin and Celia had bought the house just 2 years ago, they hadn't had time to accumulate much capital even in a strong market. In the end, Colin walked out of the auction with enough money to make the down payment on a 2-bedroom condo in a good neighborhood. By the time the old house was sold, the new apartment was bought, and Colin moved in. The waiting period for the divorce to be finalized was almost over. Through a friend, Colin found out that Vince and Celia had already sent out wedding invitations. Of course, Colin did not receive an invitation, but he learned that the happy couple was going on a honeymoon to the Caribbean for a week. Accordingly, he made his plans. When the tanned couple returned, Vince picked Celia up in his arms, intending to carry her over the threshold. But, stepping over it, I noticed an index card tucked under the door. Check the back porch, the sign read. Worried, he set his new wife on her feet, took her hand and hurried out onto the veranda. At first, he saw nothing unusual, but when he turned in the right direction, his eyes widened and he gasped. There was a luxurious 3-burner propane grill plugged in and ready to go. He turned back to Celia. Did you buy this for me? I've always wanted one, but they're so expensive. No, she admitted. I don't know anything about it. Before she could finish, she noticed an envelope taped to the shiny stainless steel grill casing. Hurriedly approaching, she took it off and opened it. When I read the postcard inside, I gasped. I can't believe it's from Colin. It says here, best wishes for your new marriage. Is this a gift from Colin for us? Vince asked incredulously. If that's what he meant by moving on, then all I can say is that he's a more generous person than me. The gift is amazing. I will be glad to grill on it this summer. I have to call and thank him, Celia said as Vince checked the grill's capabilities. When Colin picked up the phone, Celia sounded surprised, grateful, and even a little guilty. Colin, we just found your wedding present. I can't believe you bought such an expensive grill for us. It's too much. Did Vince like him? Did you like it? He's still standing on the porch and drooling. Okay, that's what I was hoping for. But you shouldn't have done anything like that. We didn't even send you an invitation to the wedding. Colin laughed. Of course they didn't send it. That would be too strange. But he was serious, saying it was time to accept what had happened and move on. The gift is just my way of showing that I did it. I hope you and Vince like it. When Celia returned to the veranda to tell Vince everything, Vince shook his head in surprise. Like I said, he's more generous than me. Anyway, how about we make some burgers for dinner tonight, Mrs. Callahan? As April turned into May, Celia and Vince began making plans to celebrate Mother's Day with Celia's mom. They discussed the possibility of inviting her to brunch at a good restaurant, but when the idea was proposed, her mother did not want to. Mother's Day is always such a madhouse. I'll be just as happy if you both come here for brunch. So it was agreed that the newlyweds would bring with them a special dish consisting of salmon and grilled vegetables, Vince's new favorite toy. On the way, Celia asked her husband, "Did you remember to buy flowers for Mom?" Frowning, Vince quickly turned off the highway and pulled into the parking lot of a regional grocery store chain. He soon returned with a dozen pink roses. "They're a little out of shape," he apologized to Celia, "but the main thing is the intention." After arriving and taking the dishes with food to the kitchen, Vince handed the roses to Celia's mother with wishes for a happy Mother's Day. "Thank you, Vince, that's so sweet," she told him. "Then I'll put them in a vase." Then she invited them to set the table in the kitchen and take the plates to the dining room. "Your dad is starving," she whispered to her daughter. While they were bringing in the food, Celia couldn't help but notice the luxurious floral arrangement that stood in the middle of the dining table. "Mom, they're great," she said. "Did Dad give this to you?" The mother chuckled. "Is he? He said I wasn't his mother. Actually, Colin sent them. Aren't they beautiful?" "Colin? Well, yes, isn't that nice of him?" her mother said. Nodding, Celia noticed a frown flicker across her new husband's face. Later in the afternoon, when the couple were at home and Celia had a few free minutes, she called Colin. "Why did you send my mother this flower arrangement?" "What is it?" she asked. "Oh, good, so they made it in time. Did she like them?" "Of course she liked them," Celia admitted. "They're beautiful. But why did you send them?" Colin sighed. "Your mother has always been very kind to me, and since my mother died many years ago, I have always felt close to yours. That's why I wanted to honor her memory. I hope it won't be a problem." No, not at all. As I said, she appreciated your concern. I just didn't expect this, that's all. To be honest, I really appreciate it too. Okay, and if I haven't made a huge mistake, I have a request for you. Of course. Which one? It's a little awkward, but I think it's time for me to get back to the dating game. He could almost hear her hesitation. Colin, it's going to be very awkward for me to try to set you up with anyone. Oh no, nothing like that. It's just that I can already see myself inviting a girl on a date to my apartment. And to be honest, now she looks a little neglected, more like a bachelor pad. Can I hire you to decorate? You've always had much better taste than me. Wow, I didn't expect it. But of course, I think I could do it. I just finished a big design project, so I can do yours right now. Is there a time next week when I could come in and take a look? Of course. Now I work from home 3 days a week, so Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday will suit me. Great. I plan to arrive on Tuesday afternoon. When Colin let her into his apartment the following Tuesday, Celia immediately saw what he was talking about. The walls are painted dirty white, the carpet is worn and faded, and the furniture is mostly made up of what he took out of their old house. It seems to me that we could go in different directions, she told him after looking around the room. Why don't you tell me what style you want? He shrugged helplessly. To be honest, Celia, I don't really know much about styles, color theory, and so on. He looked around uncertainly, then beamed. I would like you to design a space that you like. He waved his hands quickly. Not in the sense of something feminine and pink. I definitely want it to look like a straight man lives here. But I don't want it to look like a sports bar here. He gestured in her direction. It's just a place that someone like you will like, one where a woman with good taste will feel comfortable. I can only trust you with this. That's very flattering, Colin. In fact, I think I know exactly what you need. Let me go back to my studio and work out a plan. Then I'll come back to you with a few options and we'll see what you like. Great. Thank you, Celia. I really appreciate it. For the next 2 months, Celia met with Colin almost once a week. They had to choose a design project, review and adjust the proposed decor, and then control the repairs they had agreed on. After that, she constantly brought him samples of fabrics, paints, and photographs of furniture for approval. Colin was pleased with the progress he had made, but with Vince it was different. "Do you really have to see this guy so often?" he complained to his wife one evening when she returned from another visit to Colin's apartment. "Oh, come on, darling, I don't see Colin any more than I do any of my other clients. Besides, I thought you were comfortable with him, especially after his wedding gift to us. I think he really left everything in the past," she soothed. "Yes, it is possible. But you two have a story of your own, and I can't help but wonder if he's really forgotten you." "Well, I forgot it. In fact, if you come into the bedroom with me, I'll show you how much I've forgotten him." Although Celia believed that she had managed to calm Vince's jealousy, she was afraid that Colin's next request might rekindle her husband's jealousy. During one of his visits, he suddenly asked her, "Are you still a member of the book club?" Yes, I am. We meet every other Saturday afternoon." "And what? Is the club only for women, or do you mind if a man joins it?" "I don't know. In my opinion, we have never been approached by a man with a request to join. Why, are you interested?" "Actually, yes. I've already told you that I want to start dating again, but I really don't know what to talk about with a woman. Most of the girls I know aren't interested in sports, so we probably won't have anything in common. So I thought that if I knew more about the books that my companion can read, it would at least give me the opportunity to start a conversation." She nodded. "Okay, I understand that. Actually, that's pretty insightful of you. How would you like this option? At the next meeting of our book club, I will raise this issue. If they don't mind, I'll let you know and you can come to the next meeting. If not, I will at least tell you which book we have chosen so that you can read it yourself." "I really appreciate it, Celia. Of course, I would prefer to participate in the discussion and hear what you ladies think about this book. But if they are uncomfortable with the male presence, then I will read on my own." When Celia brought up the subject with her book club friends, she was pleasantly surprised that they were enthusiastic about Colin's offer to join their group. "If you don't mind your ex-husband's presence, we'd appreciate a man's opinion," they told her. Celia noted with amusement that the two unmarried ladies seemed most interested in Colin joining in. At the first meeting, Colin completely conquered even those members of the club who expressed doubts. Unlike several ladies, Colin actually finished reading the book and was able to make some in-depth remarks. At the same time, he tried not to dominate the discussion. Celia was relieved to see that Colin respected different opinions and repeatedly encouraged the thoughts of others. At the end of the meeting, everyone announced that the experiment had been a success, and Colin hugged everyone as he left. Celia noted that singles expressed their appreciation especially vigorously. Colin not only attended the next meeting, but also invited the group to hold a session in his newly renovated condominium. Upon arrival, the ladies oohed and awed about the design for the first half hour, and Colin did not fail to emphasize that all this was the work of Celia. According to custom, the host of the meeting had to offer snacks and drinks. Colin didn't mince his words and provided the guests with a couple of cutting boards with snacks, as well as several bottles of Prosecco to keep up the conversation. The discussion of the book that followed may not have been brilliant, but it was certainly lively. When it was time to leave, everyone was full of thanks. One of the unmarried ladies, a pretty red-haired girl named Kelly, was so insistent in expressing her gratitude that Celia had to distract Colin with an imaginary errand. When everyone had left, Celia stayed, offering to help Colin with the cleaning. He gratefully agreed. After the used plates and glasses were put in the dishwasher, he escorted her to the exit. Taking her hands in his, he thanked her for her help and for the fact that she supported his connection to the group. She shook her head. "Actually, I should be thanking you. Everyone had a great time, as you might have noticed, and I think you added a lot to our discussion. Besides, I really appreciate all your compliments about the decor. It was very nice of you." "You're welcome," he replied. "And thanks for getting rid of Kelly," he added slyly. She tensed instantly. "You have to watch out for her, Colin. She's a nice girl, but she's still too young for you. And from what I've heard, she's a bit of a heartthrob, if you know what I mean." He nodded solemnly, hiding his amusement at her reaction. Celia smiled again. "I have to go home, but thanks again for everything." She hugged him and kissed him on the cheek. Then she pulled back and looked at him intently. "I think I've seen a different side of you, Colin. I'm loving it. She kissed him on the cheek once more, then turned and left. When Vince found out about Celia's new book club member, he was very upset and demanded that she forbid Colin to come again. She, in turn, was clearly annoyed. "I won't do anything like that," she replied. "The rest of the girls like him, and he looks like a great addition to our group. So stop being jealous, Vince. Nothing is happening, and you look stupid pretending that it is." Vince managed to keep his feelings to himself, but that night he felt a strong desire to get his wife back. Their lovemaking was unusually energetic. Vince seemed determined to reassert his dominance by not paying proper attention to foreplay and penetrating her before she was fully aroused. Celia realized what was happening and decided it was wiser not to protest. The next morning, Vince apologized for the way he had treated her, but she brushed off his concerns. "I don't want it to be like this every time," she told him, "but sometimes a change of scenery doesn't hurt." Relieved, he went to work with a light step. As soon as he left, her forced smile quickly disappeared. Throwing on a sundress, Celia discovered that she was still in pain after yesterday and took another capsule. After swallowing it with breakfast, she drove to her design studio to see what was planned for the new week. When she saw that the carpet for Colin's apartment had already been delivered, she quickly called him and offered to bring it. His agreement inspired her. After checking her makeup, she headed towards him. As soon as he let her in, she quickly put a small rug in the designated place for him. Colin praised her choice and then invited her to stay for a minute and have a cup of coffee. She readily agreed. However, when she sat down on the new sofa, she grimaced in displeasure, and Colin immediately caught it. "Is something wrong, Celia?" "What is it?" he asked with a note of concern in his voice. "Nothing," she replied. "Vince was a little bit... He was aggressive with me last night, and I'm a little sore this morning, that's all." She couldn't help but notice a frown pass over his face, followed by a determined look. Without saying a word, he pushed the coffee table away from the sofa. Then he took his new rug and spread it out in front of her. Placing a pillow in the middle, he invited her to stretch out on the carpet. She protested weakly, but gave in when he insisted. When she lay face down on the carpet, lifting her hips with a pillow, he sat on her and began to rub her neck, starting from the base of the skull. As his fingers stroked and pressed, the tension in her body began to go away, and she let out a satisfied moan. Then his hands went down to his shoulders, and then along his spine, working on his buttocks. Soon Celia was purring like a contented cat as he flexed the sore muscles of her back. She was almost ready to fall asleep when she felt him sink lower, slide his hands under her hip bones and lift them slightly. The effect was impressive. The pain she felt there disappeared. "God, Colin, it feels like heaven. I'm turning into mush." The silence of their breathing was interrupted by the ringing of Celia's phone. She ignored him for a moment, but then reluctantly took the phone out of her bag. When she saw who was calling, she sat up straight and picked up the phone. "Hi, Vince, how are you? I'm sorry I missed your previous call. I was busy with some things." "No, I'm not busy right now." "Of course, lunch sounds good. Where do you want to meet?" "Okay, great, I'll be there in half an hour. I love you, baby." She turned and looked apologetically at Colin. "I'm sorry, I have to go." She slipped into the guest bathroom and cleaned herself up as best she could. She left the bathroom and headed for the door. But before she left, she turned to him. "We need to talk. I'll call you." Colin nodded in understanding, and she disappeared. At lunch, Vince questioned her again about where she had been and what she had been doing, but Celia detailed her previous excuses. In the end, he dropped the subject. He thought he noticed something unusual about her, but he couldn't figure out what it was. At home, after he returned to his office, she managed to take a shower, but she was still afraid that he would be able to find some evidence of her infidelity. The next day, Colin was working on a computer in his home office when his cell phone rang. Looking at the display, he wasn't surprised to see that it was Celia. She begged him to meet her to talk, and he invited her to come right now. After disconnecting, he quickly finished the report he was working on for his office and then prepared an SMS on another phone. After receiving a signal from the security door of the condominium and learning that it was Celia, he pressed send on his phone and invited her to enter. When he opened the front door, he saw Celia with a worried expression on her face. She stepped inside and he closed the door behind her, and then turned and stared at her. "Colin, we need to talk about what happened yesterday," she began, but he pressed his fingers to her lips to stop her. She stared at him in confusion until he came closer to her and replaced his fingers with his lips. "Oh my God!" she breathed out and passionately returned the kiss. While their tongues searched for each other, he led her backwards into his bedroom, unbuttoning his clothes as he went. By this time, she was already breathing heavily and quickly began to pull off his sweatshirt, pulled it over his head and threw it on the floor, and then hurriedly reached for his belt. The two of them managed to undress each other, after which Colin picked Celia up in his arms and laid her on the bed. Celia moaned at his onslaught and then screamed in surprise when he grabbed her and turned her over, knocking her over. But she quickly seized the initiative, pulled her knees under her and started riding him as fast and hard as she could. This time, instead of moaning, she was shouting obscenities. Vince was working at his desk when an anonymous text message arrived on his personal cell phone. "If you want to find Celia, look in Colin's bedroom," it read. "Who is this?" He typed back but did not receive an answer. Normally, he would have ignored the text message from an unfamiliar phone, but this message intensified the paranoia that he had been experiencing for a long time. Grabbing his car keys, he rushed into the office garage and raced to Colin's apartment. When Celia came to Colin in the morning, she didn't know what she wanted, but now only one thing was important to her: to get Colin. Vince roared into the parking lot of Colin's condo. When he spotted Celia's car, he braked in front of the main entrance, not bothering to find a parking spot. Jumping out of the car, he saw the tenant coming out and hurried to the open door before it could close. Rushing inside, he stopped at the entrance to get his bearings. Then he went up the stairs to the second floor, not wanting to risk Colin and Celia hearing the elevator. When he reached the landing, he hurried straight to the entrance to Colin's apartment. His first thought was to slam his shoulder into the door and rush inside, but when he put his hand on the door handle, it turned readily in his hand. "That stupid freak forgot to lock the door," he rejoiced. Slipping into the apartment, he sneaked into the master bedroom. "What the hell, Celia? How could you do this to me? Especially him?" Shocked, she turned her head sharply and saw the one she most wanted to avoid. Vince stood there in obvious pain and anger, his fists clenched, tears streaming down his cheeks. "No, Vince, no. You have to let me explain everything," she began. But Vince did not let her finish. "There's nothing to explain, cheater. You broke my heart. I never want to see you again." With that, he turned and blindly staggered out of the bedroom, heading for the front door. "Wait, Vince, stop! You're not serious about this. Wait a second," Celia shouted, desperately pulling on her clothes to follow her husband. Colin watched Celia leave in silence. Then he got dressed and returned to his office. Noticing the phone left on the table, he picked it up and threw it into the trash. "I don't think I'll ever need it again," he told himself. When the phone fell to the bottom of the urn, the last message he sent flashed on the screen. "If you want to find Celia, look in Colin's bedroom." He was still working when he was interrupted by a timid knock on the front door. When he opened it, Celia came into the room, dragging a large suitcase behind her. She turned to face him, and Colin saw that her eyes were red and her makeup was running down her cheeks. "Vince kicked me out," she said with tears in her eyes. "And how is he?" Colin asked. "He's completely upset," she told him. "He shouts at me, then sobs from the bottom of his heart. I didn't understand much of what he was saying. The only thing that was clear was that the sight of me was killing him, and that he wanted me to leave as soon as possible." She shook her head. "I'm very worried about him, but I don't know what I can do." Colin nodded. "I know this feeling." Then her gloomy expression cleared up. "But at least now you and I can be together. We won't have to hide how we feel about each other." She raised her arms to hug him, but his answer stopped her. "I don't think so." She was confused not only by his words, but also by his tone. "What did you say?" "What is it?" she asked. "Actually, you're right, Celia. We don't have to hide our feelings anymore. And my feelings are such that I wouldn't take you back even if you became the last woman in the world. I'd be crazy if I brought back a cheater in my life. No, not even a two-time one." She was shocked by his outburst, but quickly tried to regain the advantage. "I may have cheated on Vince, but I did it to make up for my mistake when I dumped you. Now I'm back and I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you how loving and faithful I can be." "You really are quite the thing," Colin chuckled. "You treat men as interchangeable parts. You get tired of one, you change for another. If nothing happens with the second one, it doesn't matter. You just go back to the first one." "It's not fair, Colin. Besides, you wanted me. You seduced me." He nodded his head in sarcastic agreement. "Oh, of course I understand. It's enough for some guy to be polite to you. Give you a couple of compliments, maybe give you something, and you'll drop your panties in a moment. No, it's not like that. That's right, and I have no doubt that if I take you back, the same thing will happen again. I have news for you, Celia. I've seen what you really are like. As the song says, we will never be together. He went to the front door, opened it, and threw her bag out into the hallway. Get out, he shouted. Tears were streaming down her face, and her breathing was choked with sobs. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Where should I go? He crossed his arms over his chest. If you want my opinion, I'd advise you to go straight to hell. Cowering under his anger, she staggered out the door, and Colin quickly slammed it shut, this time not forgetting to bolt it. Then he walked over to the couch and sat down on it, feeling the adrenaline slowly drain out of his body. Relaxing, he thought about everything that had happened. I wonder what Dr. Helmar would say about all this. After all, I followed at least some of his instructions. I found the wisdom to understand what I could change, and the courage to make changes, even if sometimes I had to hold my nose. But I'll leave the search for humility to Vince and Celia. He shook his head. I don't think it will be easy for any of them to achieve peace of mind. Vince will have to come to terms with the fact that he is a cuckold who will soon be divorced. Celia will have to come to terms with the fact that she is a cheater who was kicked out of the house and is going to be divorced for the second time. He smiled grimly. Maybe I should send them Dr. Helmar's card. Satisfied, he looked around, admiring his newly decorated apartment. Then he returned to his office and sat down at his desk. At the same time, he drew attention to the card with Kelly's name and number. On the back, it was handwritten, "Call me sometime." He nodded to himself. I think I'm ready to do it.